All right, let's make sure that this stream is working. Working. And it looks like we are in fact live. Stream is working. How nice. Working. I'm just gonna go retweet this so that people know. Let the people know, you know. And it looks like we are in fact live. Stream is working. How nice. Working. I'm gonna live. Just gonna now retweet this so that people know. Let the people know, you know. There we go. All right, so what are we doing today? Well, I made some music inspired by the games Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga and Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga 2 for my free game and music pack, Goddess Digital. And I'm just gonna go through each of the songs and explain how I made them. Talk about the song ideas, talk about the instruments I used, and the composition, like what the instruments play and why. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm gonna turn this to YouTube videos later, so I'm gonna do a formal YouTube intro for each song. So, you know, please bear with me. Well, let's get started. My name is Jens Svide and I make video game music, and I made this overworld theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga. I want to show you how I made it, so let's look at the song idea, the instruments I used, and what the instruments play. Let's listen to the song a little bit first, so... Oh, wait. I didn't press record. It's gonna be a bit difficult to turn this into a YouTube video later if I don't record it. So let's do that. And record. Okay, nice. So, my name is Jens Svide and I make video game music. I made this overworld theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show how I made it. So we will look at the song idea, the instruments I used, what the instruments play. Let's listen to the song a little bit first, so you get an idea of how it sounds like. Let's use the right audio device too. So it sounds like that. And this song is inspired by Junkyard from Digital Devil Saga 1. And my song is also inspired by Urban Area from Digital Devil Saga 2. Yes. So I thought these songs had a very sentimental feeling. They feel almost a bit desolate, like an empty world, but they also have a feeling of hope, I think. Especially Junkyard. in Digital Devil Saga 2, most people in the world have actually turned to stone, so that's why my song is called Petra, because it means stone. And thought like, how would it feel to walk around in a world where you alone are still? Not turned to stone, walking around in a world of stone statues, basically. So that's where the song idea came from. And let's look at the instruments I used. So first off is the electric piano. Playing these jazzy chords. And electric piano is very common in Digital Devil Saga music. It gives that jazzy sound. It sounds kind of thick, kind of smooth. It's a very nice instrument. And then there is the electronic drums. Electronic drums are also used a lot in Digital Devil Saga, especially Digital Devil Saga 2. And what electronic drums are drums that are made by a synth or a drum machine, so they are not drums from a real drum set. Then there is the strings. Sort of phasey strings. Feel kind of a bit technological. The thing is, a lot of music, I would say music in Digital Devil Saga usually falls into one of two categories, which is jazzy songs and electronic songs. And in this case, my song here is sort of a mix of both. It has some of the jazzy things, like the electric piano, but also electronic drums and synth bass. This instrument, well, synth bass is also very common in Digital Devil Saga in the electronic songs. Then there are some other instruments like the lead synth chimes. I thought it sounded kind of nice in urban areas, so I did something similar. And also this sort of other synth bass. Sounds very dancey. Those are the instruments, and let's talk about what they play, the composition. So the synth bass is sort of pulsing, right? It plays this fast pattern. Instead of just playing a few long notes. And pulsing synth bass patterns that play many fast notes in a row and move around a lot is very common in the electronic songs of Digital Devil Saga. For example, Junkyard. I was actually gonna stream earlier yesterday as well. But you know what happened? I had a fucking hand situation, so I had to clear those out before I could stream. So do you hear how that bass line is pretty pulsing? It doesn't play a few long notes like do, do. No, it's pulsing, it moves around a lot. And that's what I did as well for my synth line, my bass line. Yes. And this song also stays on one chord for most of the time. Just stays on this chord. Okay, well it jumps up for a brief moment, but then it comes back down. that's also inspired by Junkyard. The melody in this is also pretty slow. It sounds sort of singing. And that's common for the electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga. There are a lot of fast things in the song, like the pulsing synth bass, this electronic drum pattern with the fast hi-hats, the things going. So having something slower to contrast that feels a bit floating, and I really like that. Speaking of which, let's talk about the drum pattern and these hi-hats. Playing this pretty fast pattern, like right, like, and this sort of fast hi-hats is also very common in the electronic songs of Digital Devil Saga. I think it gives it a rolling feeling, like it's moving forward. I also have some fun electronic percussion here and there, like this very thick snare drum. It's just a snare drum tuned down 2 octaves. It's very dark. And it's very short too. Yeah, I like it. I think it sounds kind of cool. The last thing I want to say about this song before we listen to the entire thing is that the melodies in the song are actually taken from music I did inspired by classic Shin Megami Tensei. Not this part. And music I did inspired by Shin Megami Tensei 3. I'm using the same melody here, because I thought, if I'm making music inspired by Digital Devil Saga as well, it would be fun to use the melody I used those other times. So those were the instruments I used and what they play. So let's listen to the full song now. Here is Petra from Goddess Digital. And let's try that again, because I turned off the kick drum. I forgot what kick drum I used for a second. Alright, let's go. Here is Petra from Goddess Digital. the first song I made, Petra. Let's move on and break down the next song now. Fog Home. And make a new video recording for this, so it's easier to edit later. And the project is loading. Alright, so here we are in the second song. And let me do the formal YouTube intro again. My name is Jens Wiede and I make video game music. I made this... Take two. My name is Jens Wiede and I make music for video games. I made this song inspired by... Take three. My name is Jens Wiede and I make music for video games. I made this jazzy area theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show how I made it. We will look at the song idea, the instruments I used, what instruments play, and at the end we will listen to the full song. Let's listen to the song a little bit so you get an idea of how it sounds like. Sort of like that. Yeah, so this song is inspired by the jazzy area themes from Digital Devil Saga, specifically Digital Devil Saga 1. Songs like Mulhadara, and Svadhisthana. So let's look at the instruments I used in my song. And the first instrument that I used is, once again, electric piano. It has a nice, smooth, jazzy sound, and it's what really gives the song its feeling. You could call it the main instrument. Electric piano is used in pretty much every jazzy Digital Devil Saga song. It's used in Muladhara, and it's used in Svadhisthana. You know, I never noticed before, but now that I'm listening to Svadhisthana, it also has a subtle organ in the background. I never noticed that before. That's pretty cool. The next instrument is the electric guitar, playing the lead melody. These jazzy songs in Digital Devil Saga usually have lead guitar playing the lead melody, and the guitar sound usually has little or no distortion. Distortion is what makes electric guitars sound strong and gritty, and in this case I didn't use much distortion, so it sounds clean and, you know, chill. Here's some electric guitar used in Muladhara from Digital Devil Saga. And that guitar has a little bit of distortion. And the guitar in Svadhisthana either has no distortion or maybe just a little bit of distortion, making it sound like the lack of distortion, making it sound very clean, very nice. Distortion also sounds nice, of course. So let's look at the drums for a little bit. The drums here are acoustic drums. And what acoustic drums means is just that they are drums from a real drum set. So they are not electronic drums from a synth or a drum machine. And the jazzy songs in Digital Devil Saga usually uses acoustic drums for their jazzy songs as well. And those were the instruments in my song, so let's talk about what the instruments play. The first important thing is that the chords, the chord progression is pretty jazzy. So what does that mean? What does jazzy chords mean? Well, it means that they are not pop song chords. We want something that sounds cooler. And an easy way to do this is to not play the root chord. So if your song is in, let's say, B minor, your chords would not play the B minor chord. It gives a feeling of dancing around the root chord, dancing around the root note, and it feels jazzy. In my case, my song is in F major, and I don't play the F major chord. Jazz. Svadhisthana from Digital Devil Saga does a similar thing, where it doesn't play the root chord. The song also has jazzy guitar melodies, like this. And what the jazzy guitar melody is that the guitar melodies in jazzy songs in Digital Devil Saga usually do this. They play many faster notes before playing a long note. So they do not play two long notes in a row. And the guitar melodies also avoid the root note. So again, if your song was in B minor, the guitar melody would rarely play B. These two things combined make the guitar melody feel a bit floating and not singing. It's not so much a sing-along guitar melody. I think the guitar melody in Muladhara is a good example of this. Yeah, so those were the instruments, what they play. Let's listen to the full song. Here is Fog Home from Goddess Digital. I just realized I forgot to talk about some instruments, so let's quickly cover the remaining ones. There is also this drum layer of percussion. It sounds pretty groovy together with the main drums. The bass is actually a real bass guitar. I recorded this bass. Playing this very simple bass line. Can you believe that it actually took me many takes to get this? I just needed that swing to be right. The groove. There is some strings in this song, especially during the chorus of the song. Playing sort of ethereal chords. During the second verse of the song, the strings also double the main melody a little bit. The mallet doubles the guitar melody during the verses, this soft instrument. This also sounds nice and jazzy. And finally, there is a guitar that's backing up the electric piano, playing the same chords. And that was everything in this song. So that's this song done. Let's move on to the next song now. And that song is a battle theme, which is much heavier and uses more electric guitar. And here we are. So, once again, I'm gonna do the YouTube intro. My name is Jens Fide, and I make music for video games. I made this battle theme inspired by Digital Devil. I should also mention that it's part of the Shin Megami Tensei series, so take two. My name is Jens Fide, and I make music for video games. I made this battle theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show how I made it. We will look at the song idea I had for this, the instruments I used, what the instruments play, and finally we will listen to the full song. Let's listen to the song a little bit first so you get an idea of how it sounds like. It sounds sort of like that. So this song idea was inspired by hunting from Digital Devil Saga 1. Let's try that again. I like its sort of harsh feeling. It feels ruthless, like you're in a ruthless world where you eat each other. I mean, in the sense of Digital Devil Saga, that's literal, but also metaphorically. My song was also inspired by Epic Battle from Digital Devil Saga 2, which is faster, like my song is. those were the inspirations. Let's look at the instruments I used, and let's start with the electric guitars, because there are many of them. So these rhythm guitars, the background instruments of the song, sound pretty heavy and gritty. That's because they have a fair bit of distortion on them, and distortion is what makes them sound like that. The lead guitar has a slightly different sound, but it's also very distorted. The lead guitar also has a chorus effect on it, which makes it sound wide and big. Then the drums are acoustic drums, meaning they are drums sampled from a real drum set. Meaning they are not electronic drums from a synth drum machine. So I actually have organ in this song too, and while battle themes in Digital Devil Saga don't always have organ, some do. Organ is a pretty common instrument in the Megami Tensei series as a whole, so I thought it was fun to use it. Rock with organ always makes me think of the band Deep Purple, that classic rock band. Okay, so those were the instruments I used. Let's look at what they play, the composition of the song. So this song has guitar riffs, and the riff is a short, repeating guitar part that only uses a few different notes or chords. The chord progression is also Phrygian, and that just means it goes from the root note to one note higher. Hear that? Sounds a bit Middle Eastern, perhaps? And it's also very heavy metal to do that. A song also uses tritonus here and there, which is a note that from the root note sounds pretty dissonant, pretty harsh. You hear those notes like it sounds kind of dissonant and evil, and that's what the song Hunting from Digital Devil Saga does as well. It goes like always hammering in that harsh feeling. Here it goes. It's pretty harsh, pretty ruthless. The guitar melodies in the battle themes of Digital Devil Saga are more singing. They sound like something you could sing along to. That's in contrast to the jazzy guitar melodies in the jazzy songs, which are not so much. And in my opinion, what makes a singing guitar melody is that it plays many long notes in a row. and that it often plays the root note. So if the song is in, let's say, B minor, the guitar melody will play B often. In my case, my guitar melody starts on the root note and ends on the root note. Which makes it feel strong and sort of singing. The guitar melody in Hunting is singing, even though it sounds pretty dissonant. But it has many long notes and it does play the root note often. My song took a little bit of inspiration from the version of Hunting from Digital Devil Saga 2 as well, because my song actually stays on mostly one chord until the chorus section where it lets loose and plays different chords. So it's a lot of tension built up for a big release in the chorus. And like I said, the version of Hunting from Digital Devil Saga 2 does this as well. Stays on this riff. Until the chorus. So yes, those were the instruments in my song, the inspirations behind it, and what the instruments play. Let's listen to the full song now. Here is Devour from Goddess Digital. And that was Devour, a battle theme inspired by Digital Devil Saga. Now we're gonna move on to the next song. So these were the first 3 songs I made inspired by Digital Devil Saga, right? And these first 3 are more inspired by Digital Devil Saga 1. The next 3 are more inspired by Digital Devil Saga 2, which has a more electronic sound. It uses more synth, more electronic drums, and stuff like that. So the next one is a pretty a little bit unsettling area theme, or a dungeon theme you could call it. That's more accurate. And here we are in the next project. So you know the drill. I'm gonna do a YouTube intro, and then we're gonna start. My name is Jens Wide, and I make video game music. I made this dungeon theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show you how I made it. We will look at the song idea, the instruments I used, and what the instruments play. And finally, we will listen to the full song. Let's listen to the song a little bit so you get an idea of how it sounds like. For the video, maybe I could pick a better spot to preview from so it's a bit snappier, a bit shorter. Or maybe I could pick a part with a melody, maybe this. So that's how it sounds like. And the song idea came from 5 years before from Shin. Let's try this again. Yes, so it sounds sort of like that. And this song was inspired by 5 years before from Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga 2. I guess I can skip ahead a little bit. Which has a pretty unsettling feeling. I had an idea for this song like you were climbing up from the underground. Like you're underground, feeling sort of locked in, trapped, and you're climbing towards freedom. That's the idea I had for my song. So let's look at the instruments I used. So first off, there is this pulsing synth bass. That goes a little bit harder in the other sections. The electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga often have this sort of pulsing synth bass. You hear that like and synth bass just means that the bass is played by a synth and not a real not a real bass guitar or a contrabass. So then there's the electronic drums. There's a few layers here, but mainly it's a kick drum. This percussion loop. Which sounds kind of gritty and strange. And this little percussion layer. And sometimes there's like a crash. The electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga also tend to use electronic drums. And electronic drums means that the drums are made by a synth or a drum machine, and they are not drums from a real drum set. The song also has a deep synth pad that gives a ambience to the song. Yep, it sounds like that, and it just keeps going. This was also inspired by 5 years before. Having that deep synth pad at the start. I also have some organ in my song. I thought it sounded kind of churchy, maybe a little bit churchy, a little bit climbing. Kind of interesting though that the first organ is actually a synth. But then an organ comes in, which is an organ sampled from a real organ. Church organ. Continuing on the churchy or medieval theme, I have this cembalo, which is just a nice little counter melody to the organ. Kind of reminds me of Tales of the Tales of series, like Tales of the Abyss. What other instruments do I have? Oh, in fact, I have this sound effect, which sounds like an electric guitar in the song. But it's actually just noise. Doesn't it sound like an electric guitar right here? Maybe because there is a synth bass underneath that plays some notes, but it makes this noise feel like an electric guitar. And I think that's kind of interesting. There's also this noise loop. I'm pretty sure I have heard Hideki Naganuma use this exact noise loop in the Air Gear soundtrack. This is from Distorted Reality, by the way, a pretty famous sample CD. And this drum loop was from also Distorted Reality. And what do you know? This was also from Distorted Reality. What a good and iconic sample library. And the bass is also from Distorted Reality. Can you believe it? Alright, I have some electric guitar in my song, and to be fair, electric guitar pretty uncommon in Digital Devil Saga's electronic songs. I just had a feeling. I thought it would fit nice. And this guitar is very distorted, meaning that the guitar amplifier, the thing that makes the guitar sound, has the distortion setting turned up a lot, making the guitar feel nice and strong. Were those all the instruments? No, it was not, because there is this string melody later. This is Roland SRX strings, I'm pretty sure. Nope. It is in fact Expand 2. What a good sample library. It is. So, those were all the instruments in my song. Let's look at what they play now. The composition of the song. And let's start with this pulsing synth bass again. So, do you remember that the synth bass plays a fast pattern, moving between different notes instead of staying on just a few long notes? So it plays many notes, right? It doesn't just stay on a few long notes, etc. The electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga often have this kind of pulsing synth bass that moves around a lot. 5 years before, from Digital Devil Saga 2 has this. Gives the song a sort of hectic feel. I really like it. And it just sounds cool as well. My guitar melody was actually inspired by Sweet Home from Digital Devil Saga 1, or should I say it's very similar. I thought it had a really nice tension when you play that guitar melody that moves, sort of climbs up, but the background chords don't change. It feels nice and tense, and like I just said, Sweet Home from Digital Devil Saga 1 does this too. And those were the instruments I used in my song, the song idea behind the song, and what the instruments play. So let's listen to the full song now. Here is Underground Fuzz from Goddess Digital. That was Underground Fuzz, an electronic dungeon theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga 2. So, two more songs left, 2 more songs to go. Let's move on to the next one. And the next one is another dungeon theme that is more, well, not as heavy, not as slow. It's faster, it feels a bit lighter. Maybe even a bit dancier, you could say. So here we are in this song, and let me do the YouTube intro once again. Actually, my cat wants to come inside, so let me go and open the door for her real quick. And I'm back. Alright, so let's do the YouTube intro for the song. I'm Jens Fide, and I make music for video games. I made this dungeon theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show you how I made it. We will look at the song idea, the instruments I used, and what instruments play. Finally, we will listen to the full song, but let's listen to the song just a little bit first so you get an idea of how it sounds like. It sounds sort of like that. This song was inspired by Road to Sodom first movement from Digital Devil Saga 2. With that fast rolling drum beat, and my song was also inspired by Tower of Reunion from Digital Devil Saga 2, which has a lot of pulsing synths. For my song, I got the image of going into a city or some sort of central place by moving through a data stream, like becoming data and physically walking through some representation of a data stream. That's the idea I had for the song. So let's look at its instruments, and let's start with the synth bass. And a synth bass is a bass line played by a synth instead of a real bass guitar or a contrabass or anything like that. Synth bass is used in most electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga. For example, Tower of Reunion. Do you hear that pulsing synth? So I used synth bass in my song as well. Then there are the electronic drums. Playing this catchy dancey pattern. Electronic drums just means that these are drums from a drum machine and not drums from a real drum set. Electronic drums can also be drums from a synth, though most drum machines are a type of synth. Anyway, the electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga also use electronic drums. Road to Sodom. Those fast, tight, snappy electronic drums. And Tower of Reunion. So we have synth bass and we have electronic drums. And honestly, these two enough, like on their own, are enough to create that electronic feeling. As long as they play the right notes, but we will get to that later. Let's continue with the instruments for now. My song also has this synth chords. And this is actually a combination of some belly synth and a pulsing synth layer. So if just it's actually an electric piano. So just this alone sounds like this, and then there's this pulsing synth as a layer. The jazzy songs in Digital Devil Saga often use electric piano, and the electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga often has some sort of pulsing synth. Tower of Reunion has it too. This scenario is going to sound like. So I used a pulsing synth. There are some other miscellaneous instruments in my song. We have the synth bell playing the lead melody. This other synth bell. The electric guitar in the second verse. We also have another synth bass. This one sounds more harsh, and it's playing a sort of melody, or at least a pattern on top of the normal bass. And it's playing along with these strings. I thought it would be cool to have this break, going from this chill feeling to something a little bit dramatic. So those were all the instruments, and let's talk about what they play. This synth bass is pulsating. So it plays many fast notes instead of slow, long notes. And the synth basses in the electronic songs of Digital Devil Saga do this. They play these pulsing patterns with many fast notes in a row instead of few long notes. Example, Tower of Reunion. Do you hear that synth bass pulsating, playing many notes? So I think the synth bass is a very important part of the electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga 2. Specifically what the synth bass plays, these pulsating moving patterns. They stand out and they really become a core part of the song. If it instead was long few notes, like just a deep synth pad, I think the feeling of the song would be completely different. My drums have these fast hi-hats. And a hi-hat is a little cymbal that sounds like this. Having these fast hi-hats create a rolling feeling. As an experiment, let's try making not fast hi-hats. Song feels slower. And now the song feels faster. Even though the tempo of the song didn't change. The electronic songs in Digital Devil Saga almost always have these fast hi-hats. Tower of Reunion has it too. The final thing I want to say about the composition of my song is that it uses the Shin Megami Tensei chord progression. This one. Well, almost. The real Shin Megami Tensei chord progression starts here and then moves here. So I guess I moved it around a little bit. This chord progression is used in many songs in the entire Megami Tensei franchise, from Shin Megami Tensei 1, Shin Megami Tensei 2, Shin Megami Tensei 3, Shin Megami Tensei If. I actually can't remember if it's ever used in Digital Devil Saga though, but I used it here anyway. And an example of a song using the Shin Megami Tensei progression is actually Shibuya from not Digital Devil Saga, from Shin Megami Tensei 1. It's basically like one chord, but the top note moves. Crazy falling feeling. That's the Shin Megami Tensei chord progression. So, those were the inspirations behind my song, the instruments I used, and what the instruments play. So let's listen to the full song now. Here is Data Road from Goddess Digital. with Data Road from Goddess Digital, an electronic dungeon theme inspired by Digital Devil Saga 2. So there is only one more song to go. Let's jump right into it. And this one is pretty cool. It's a slightly electronic battle theme inspired by some battle themes from Digital Devil Saga 2. It has some cool guitar parts that I really like. I might be biased as a guitarist, maybe. So here we are in the next song, and I'm gonna record a YouTube intro now. So, my name is Jens Wide and I make video game music. I made this battle theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show you how I made it. Actually, to differentiate it from the first one, how about I say it's a boss battle theme? That was my idea for it anyway, so it's actually true as well. My name is Jens Wide and I make video game music. I made this boss battle theme inspired by Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, and I want to show you how I made it. We will look at the inspirations for the song, the instruments I used, and what the instruments play. And finally, we will listen to the full song. Let's listen to the song just a little bit first so you get an idea of how it sounds like. Absolute banger, if I do say so myself. And this song was inspired by Epic Battle from Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga 2. Which is one of my favorite battle themes ever. Maybe my favorite Shoji Meguro battle theme. So let's look at the instruments I used, and let's start with the electric guitar. Or electric guitars rather, because there are a few. So the battle themes in Digital Devil Saga always use electric guitar, both as background instruments and as lead instruments. You can hear this in Epic Battle, for example. The electric guitars in my song are pretty heavily distorted. That means that this song sounds strong and gritty. So what happens if we actually remove all effects? This is how the guitar sounds without any distortion. Yeah, I think that sounds a little bit better. So the lead guitar is a slightly different sound than the background guitars, but it's also very distorted. Even more distorted, actually. Sorry, just looking at my notes. All right. So next up is the drums, and the drums here are a bit interesting because there are acoustic drums from a drum set, and electronic drums from a drum machine. So when you mix these, you get a pretty unique sound. It's like electronic rock. I really like this, and Epic Battle from Digital Devil Saga 2 does this as well. It uses some electronic drums and some more acoustic sounding drums, like more real sounding drums. It just sounds so cool. So cool. My song is basically just drums, guitar, and bass. And the bass. And I did record real bass guitar for this. There is also this pulsing 303 like synth. The 303 was a pretty iconic bass synth used in a lot of electronic music. And the song Epic Battle also has some pulsing bright synths, so I used something similar. And this other pulsing synth. In Epic Battle, we can hear something like this during the chorus, I think. Let's see. It's very far in the background, but there's a slight pulsing synth there. Playing. So I did that as well. The lead guitar melody is pretty singing, playing long notes. And ending on that climactic root notes. Basically, playing long notes makes it sound like something you could sing along to, like. And having that root note makes it feel stable, like, now we are home. And Shoji Meguro, composer of Digital Devil Saga, pretty much known for his singing guitar melodies. Never thought about it, but I think that he brings in an electric bass guitar during the chorus. That's pretty cool. Finally, the rhythm guitars of my song play riffs, and riffs are short, repeating guitar parts that use just a few notes or chords. And it just goes like that. Do 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 do. And the bass just follows that. So, those were the inspirations behind my song, the instruments I used, and what they played. So let's listen to the full song now. Here is Heaven Fuzz from Goddess Digital. And then it loops. I guess I can show how it sounds like when it ends without looping. And that's how it sounds like. So, those were all my songs from Goddess Digital. All the Digital Devil Saga inspired songs I made. I guess for fun I could show the bass line during the chorus just because I'm proud of it. Like the little climb that comes with. Wait, here it comes. I was just happy with how that turned out. So, thank you for watching. Hope you found this interesting or useful. I will turn these song breakdowns into YouTube videos. And I'm gonna let this play for one loop, then I'm gonna end the stream.